You know, it's sad. The 2026 football season hasn't really even begun, and we can already bury the hopes of dozens of fan bases. For every team like the Rams or Seahawks who harbor Super Bowl aspirations, there are the Dolphins and Giants who are already planning next year's draft. Or, the Jets and Browns. Franchises who are just fundamentally broken. The teams who are already on the outside of the playoff picture are there due to poor roster construction, front office mismanagement, and or salary cap issues. Sure, one of those teams might surprise us, but in all likelihood, they won't. So, here are 10 NFL teams whose seasons already seem over. Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins enter the 2026 season with almost no hopes of making the playoffs. In fact, they might be among the worst teams in the NFL this year. And while they won't be competing for a Super Bowl, there is a good chance that they'll be competing for the first overall pick in next year's draft. The entire organization is just a complete mess. They have a crumbling roster, massive salary cap issues, and a new coach and general manager. From a personnel standpoint, on offense, the Dolphins have a skilled running back and well, that's kinda it. Their quarterback, the unproven Malik Willis, will get the first chance to lead Miami in the post-Tua Tagovailoa era, as they decided a $99.2 million cap hit was better than keeping Tua on the roster. The financial albatross that was Tua's contract was one example of the poor decisions made by the former regime. It also doesn't help Willis that the roster is devoid of any worthwhile receivers. The offensive line is a liability, the defense lacks a steady pass rush, and routinely gives up big plays. The Fins roster also lacks any substantial depth. So when injuries pop up, and they will, the organization is going to suffer. Simply put, Miami does not have the ability to mount a significant challenge in the AFC this year. Arizona Cardinals. Another club with no real chance to compete in 2026. The Cardinals are coming off a 2025 season in which they finished with a dismal 3-14 record and made a drastic quarterback change. Arizona decided to release quarterback Kyler Murray, who's underperformed since entering the NFL, and absorb a $47.5 million cap hit to get him off the team. Instead, the Cards will enter the 2026 season with a quarterback battle between veterans Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew, neither of which provides any comfort or hope for success. Quarterback is not the only area where the franchise has decided to make a substantial change, as they also fired head coach Jonathan Gannon and replaced him with Mike LaFleur. A year with a massive transition, like a coaching and quarterback change, doesn't usually end with a successful season. And considering the Cardinals have been mired in sub-mediocrity for over a decade, that is not likely to change in 2026. That's also due to the poor makeup of the rest of the team. While Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Love offer some glimpses of hope, the remaining offense and defensive depth remain thin and subject to injury concerns. Instead of chasing a Lombardi trophy, the Cardinals will be chasing a high draft pick. Las Vegas Raiders. It would take a lot of things to break right for the Raiders in order to win anything substantial this season. Like, having every other team in the AFC go out of business, or, a meteor strike half of them, something along those lines. Las Vegas is in the beginning of a long overdue rebuilding process, and after a disastrous 2025 under head coach Pete Carroll, the Raiders are starting fresh. They've hired Clint Kubiak as head coach and have paired him with 2026's #1 pick Fernando Mendoza, hoping that they'll have a massive success together. However, there's going to be some growing pains here. While Mendoza provides hope for the future, relying on a rookie quarterback can be a risky maneuver. The Raiders have done the right thing by bringing in veteran Kirk Cousins, who provides a bridge until Mendoza is ready, as well as leadership and experience. Of course, quarterback is not the only area where Vegas will be relying on a rookie. Far from it. They're expected to have almost a dozen inexperienced players amongst their starting lineup. That many first-year players will lead to costly mistakes on both sides of the ball. The transformation from a doormat to a true contender is not going to happen in year one. In 2026, the Raiders should be focused more on building the foundations for a winning culture rather than winning itself. Chicago Bears. The Bears play in a tough division, with the Lions, Packers, and Vikings all vying for the division title. Chicago, are they actually still called that? Might squeak into the playoffs as the wildcard team, but they will not win their division or a Super Bowl. Therefore, since we already know that they won't be winning a title, I think it's fair for them to land on our list. The Bears surprised a lot of people in 2025 when they finished first in the NFC North with an 11-6 record and advanced to the NFC divisional round before losing to the Rams. But let's be honest, they overachieved last year, relying on things that went right last year to happen again would be foolhardy. Yet that's kind of what the Bears are doing at the moment. The 2025 team's defense was heavily reliant on turnovers, leading the league with 33 takeaways. That type of luck-driven success is bound to return to normal, especially when the team has failed to upgrade their pass rush. But it's not just the defense, though. The front office has yet to truly address the weakness at left tackle in the shocking retirement of center Drew Dahlman. In a tough division like the NFC North, that is a recipe for regression in 2026. Cleveland Browns. Hey, surprise! It's the Browns! Hey, raise your hand if you expected them to be on our list. What's that? Oh, everyone did? Well, except for the 3 fat, topless guys wearing dog masks. Yeah, that all adds up. Look, Cleveland is just one of the perennial members of these teams whose seasons are already overless. And, truth be told, they kinda deserve it. The organization makes the same exact mistakes every single year. Honestly, at this point, one's gotta feel kinda bad for their fans. But as far as the organization, you almost have to laugh at their ineptness. Let's start off with the unsettled quarterback position, where they have a battle between the unproven second-year Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, the high-paid veteran attempting to return from an Achilles injury and a couple of off-field issues. Watson's massive, fully guaranteed contract is literally the only reason he is still on the roster, and has simultaneously hampered the team's flexibility under the salary cap. Whoever wins the starting job may not be standing for long, though, as the offensive line will feature 4 new starters. The trade of Myles Garrett, one of the best pass rushers in the league, has left a gaping hole in their defense that severely weakens this unit. Yes, all of this and a new head coach. Any thoughts of playoff success is merely an unrealistic fantasy. Atlanta Falcons. Even in the NFC South, the absolute worst division in the NFL, the Falcons season is all but over. Look, nothing's impossible, and while I'm no odds maker, I'll put the odds of a Super Bowl win for Atlanta at like 1%. So you're saying there's a chance? Realistically, no. The Falcons are another organization that's been stuck in the rut of mediocrity for the last decade and just can't seem to shake loose. Attempting to find a replacement for Matt Ryan at quarterback has proven to be problematic. Michael Penix Jr. was the team's 4th attempt at finding a starter since 2022. Sadly, the Falcons front office wasn't impressed enough with Penix in 2025 and brought in Tua Tagovailoa to challenge him in 2026. Any team that's potentially relying on Tua to lead them to success is already in trouble, and Tua's not gonna help. The suspension of edge rusher James Pierce Jr. for the first 8 games of the season is a setback that Atlanta could ill afford. While they possess skill players at running back, Bijan Robinson, and in the passing game, Drake London and Kyle Pitts, there are still far too many roster holes for them to overcome. So for now, the most realistic scenario is the Falcons remaining on the outside of the playoff picture. New York Jets. There seems to be a reoccurring theme of ineptitude running through the teams on our list, as at least half of them have exhibited a high level of it for an extended period. Enter the New York Jets, whose reoccurring incompetence has been rather jarring. Have you ever seen another team that loses in such dramatic and comical fashion? The good news for the Jets in 2026 is that there's almost no chance that they'll finish last in their division. No, not with the Dolphins around. But other than that, there are just too many other factors standing in their way right now. Head coach Aaron Glenn led New York to a disappointing 3-14 record in 2025, and while he's still on the hot seat, the front office decided to purge their roster, trading stars Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, giving the coach a depleted defensive unit to work with. On the offensive side of the ball, the team has brought quarterback Geno Smith back for an encore, despite his first performance in New York not exactly ending well. While the starting quarterback's faults are well known and injuries are always a concern, his backup Cade Klubnik is an unproven rookie drafted earlier this year. So, yeah. Expect the Jets' playoff drought to reach to 16 seasons this year. New Orleans Saints. Primarily due to salary cap issues and an aging core, the Saints will not be able to compete in 2026. For years, when it came to managing the salary cap, New Orleans continually kicked the can down the road, pushing dead money into future years. That massaging of the cap has finally caught up to them and left the front office unable to field a solidly built team. The financial obstacle has also blocked the Saints from acquiring top free agents. widening the gap between them and others, as well as requiring them to rely on aging players who are well past their prime. Quarterback remains an unstable scenario for New Orleans, with Tyler Shuck getting the first opportunity under center. The Saints must have seen more in his 9-game audition than most people, because they have not invested in a solid backup. So if Shuck falters, then Spencer Rattler's next in line. And that is not a comforting thought. Neither are the elite game-changing quarterbacks needed to lead a team through a 17-game season. The offensive line is porous, and the defense faces multiple issues, such as the lack of a solid pass rush that gives opposing quarterbacks the time to expose weaknesses in the Saints secondary. Tennessee Titans. The Titans won 6 games in 2023 and followed that up by winning a combined 6 games over the next 2 seasons. Yeah, that wraps up a 4-year period in which they finished 19-49 and embarked on a needed rebuild. The timeline for turning things around in Tennessee does not include a winning 2026 season. New head coach Robert Saleh inherits a team that has a couple of issues, and if we're being honest here, he does not have the greatest track record. As a head coach, Saleh is a good defensive coordinator, and he's not walking into the most ideal situation here. There'll be even more pressure on second-year quarterback Cam Ward, and although he made it through his rookie season unscathed, we still don't know how effective he can be, primarily because his supporting cast is just so bad. The offensive line failed to properly protect their young signal caller, giving up a league-leading 55 sacks last year. And the 2 primary culprits, tackles Dan Moore Jr. and J.C. Latham, are both back in 2026. External factors will hinder Tennessee as well, as their division rivals, the Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars, and to a lesser extent the Indianapolis Colts, are further along in their development. And sadly, the Titans just don't have the weapons to compete with them. New York Giants. The NFC East is a tough division, with the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys being legitimate Super Bowl contenders, and the Washington Commanders slowly improving. But right now, the Giants don't possess the firepower, offensively or defensively, to stand with their rivals. New York may or may not have found their quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart, who impressed enough in 2025 to have the offense put into his hands. The front office has surrounded him with a talented supporting cast, which includes wide receiver Malik Neighbors, tight end Asaya Likely, and running back Cam Scatterbo. But each has major question marks attached to him. Will Neighbors be able to return to his Pro Bowl form? Does Likely have the ability to handle a full 17-game season? Can Scatterbo return to full health from his serious right leg injury? Unfortunately, those aren't the only areas of concern for New York. The offensive line struggles in all areas of the game and is a primary reason the offense continually fails to generate long drives. Defensively, they lack a steady pass rush and game-changing talent in the secondary. Look, the Giants are just outmatched in all facets of the game. New York isn't quite there, and so fans can expect yet another year at the bottom of the division. But hey, what other team's season is already over? Are there any notable teams that we may have left off our list? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, then hey, clicking that like button helps us out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.